Hello, my name is Petra, and in this video I will tell you more about preparation of the project's communication. First, let's talk about the elements of communication strategy. The first question comes: why should you communicate? In your project, you want to reach policy changes, and communication is a very useful tool how you can do it. So think about communication as a tool for reaching your project objectives. If communication is a useful tool for reaching your project objectives, let's first have a look what is a project objective. So, project objective should be a specific result that you in your project want to reach with your project partners, and you want to reach it within a given time frame, with a given time, with available resources. When people think about objectives, very often they use abbreviations like SMART or FAST. What does it mean? SMART is an abbreviation for an objective which is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. When you think about your project objectives, maybe you want to look at the abbreviation FAST instead of SMART. What does it mean? FAST goes one step further. The F stands for something that is frequently discussed, either in your region or in your organization. The A stands for ambitious. So are you just trying to meet the usual, or you want to go one step further? The S stands for specific, which is basically just the description of SMART. And the T in this case is transparent. And here we again come to communication, because through transparent you show what you are actually doing and what you are achieving. We can now have a look at an example of a project objective. So, for example, in a project that looks at SME competitiveness, their objective might be to increase business creation among young people in the participating regions by 10 startups per region on average by 2027 through modification of policy instruments in each region addressing that specific issue, meaning the business creation. When it comes to communication objectives, they are different. Here you need to think about the people you need to talk to. What do you want to do with them so that they change their behavior and help you reach your project objectives? You might want to think about informing them, but you might want to persuade them to do something, or even engage them directly in your project activities so that you reach your desired policy change. Again, if we translate our project objective into the communication, what do you want to reach with our youth entrepreneurs? So your goal, communication goal, might be to persuade policymakers that business creation among young people is still a valid point on the policy agenda. Now, what might be some of your desired behaviors? What might be some of the changes you want to do through communication? You might want to see those policymakers supporting the change that you want to achieve, or their behavior might be that they sign the action plans where they express their willingness to change the policy. So the desired result of your communication might be that by a certain date you will have 5 action plans signed or policy changes made. Now, let's have a look at another important element of a communication strategy, which is the target groups. Who are the target groups? Those are all the important people which have some kind of influence over the policy that you want to change. So think of the policy decision makers, think about the influencers who have an influence, not necessarily making the decisions, but influencing your policy. And also don't forget about the policy end users. So how do you prepare a target group specifically for your project's communication? So the first step is to list all those relevant people. Think about the local policymakers, think about the public servants who are preparing the materials for them. If you are working in the field of SMEs, maybe chambers of commerce should be informed and even engaged in your activities. If you are working more in the field of environment, think about all the different interest groups and environmental organizations. Once you go through the list of all the relevant people and institutions, the second step is their analysis. And for this, you might think about using this graph, where you think about those organizations in terms of their influence on the topic and their interest in their topic. Of course, for you in your project, the key target group are those people and organizations with the highest influence and the highest interest in that specific topic. You see, that's the key group for you that you need to keep informed, that you need to persuade to be on your side and even engage them, maybe as the ambassadors of your project, and then the final decision makers about the changes. Who are the others? At the opposite of this key group are people with low influence and low interest. These people might be from the general public, maybe some of the end users of this policy change. So keep an eye on them, but do not waste too many resources in that field. It's much more important to look at people with very high influence on that specific policy field, but maybe not that much of an interest. In this respect, try to inform them as much as possible and maybe bring them on board and increase their interest in your specific policy topic. The last group in this analysis is a group with very high interest but not that much of an influence over that specific topic. These people can be very useful for you, so keep them informed and engaged in your activities. Once you have all these target groups listed and well analyzed, it's time to think about the different tools and channels that you will have to use to pass the information about your project to them. Here, this table might be helpful. First, you can list all these organizations and people, the adjusted messages, because messages need to be adjusted to different target groups. You can list them here and think about the different tools and channels that work the best for them. So for example, again, if I go back to our example of youth entrepreneurs, they are young people, entrepreneurs, so using social media might be very important for them. If you think more about the local politicians or public servants, they might not be big fans of social media, but short briefs, bullet points, face-to-face meetings with them might be the best working channel to pass the information to that target group. So think specifically about the different groups and which channels will work the best and will be the most effective. Then in this table you have other two columns which will be very useful for you when building and preparing a work plan for your project communication. Meaning you need to think about time, when a specific activity, when a specific channel should be used, and the last and very important, who will be responsible for that specific channel, target group or activity. Once you have this table filled in, you need to describe for us how you will actually implement your communication. In this respect, keep in mind 3 points. Share your communication in the partnership. So tell us which activities will be done by which partner, whether one of them will be responsible for the overall coordination of communication, whether you will hire an external expert to do the communication for you. Just we need to know how you are planning to implement the communication in your project. The third point that I haven't mentioned yet is that you need to think about your internal communication, how you will keep in touch with all the partners in your project. Another important part of your project is evaluation. At the start, you set certain objectives and you need to check the progress toward reaching these objectives. I have good news because our program this time doesn't have any prescribed set indicators. Still, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have any. You should set your own internal set of indicators that will help you assess your progress. And we will ask about it. When your project will get to midterm review, we will be asking, how is your communication doing? We have an example of some indicators that you might consider. So, for example, for your events, you can think about checking the number of registered people, but also the participants. You can check whether people are coming from the desired target groups. Apart from that, you might be interested in checking their satisfaction, or whether the information you provide at your events are informative and valuable to your participants. When it comes to some other communication activities, for example, social media, you might again check how many followers you have, but on the other hand, you might be interested more in their engagement, in their likes and shares of some of your posts. The similar it is for the videos, and we will be asking you to have some videos. Again, you need to check how many people looked at it and, for example, how long they stayed with your video. Was it just 2 seconds at the very start, or have they watched the whole video you prepared? If you decide to have a newsletter, similarly, you check how many subscribers you have, but on the other hand, you can also check how many people click on your links, how many open it. On a side point, our program does not provide a newsletter for you, but you can set it your own. We will have a website for your project, and there we will be providing you with a standard set of performance indicators. So there you don't have to worry, we will be sending it to you directly. Now let's have a look where all the different communication strategy elements go in the application. So in section 6, Communication Strategy, you have 4 fields to fill in the key elements of your communication strategy. First field is for your overall objectives. In the second, you describe your target groups. In the third field, you talk about the tools and channels you will use for your communication. And in the final field, you need to describe your approach to communication implementation and evaluation. In section E, in the work plan, you should distinguish a little bit between the core phase and the follow-up phase. In the core phase, in each semester, you should focus on informing and engaging your target groups. Here you can find very useful the table that we were filling in previously, with all the different target groups, messages, and the timing of your different communication activities. In this section, you should turn all the planned activities into a specific work plan. You can think of including 2 activities. For example, in this core phase, you can include the first video that should present your project and your goals, and you can also include the project presentation. In section E2, you have 2 additional semesters for the follow-up phase. In this place, your focus on communication activities will change, because that will be the time when your project will already have some results. Also, this will be the time for the high-level dissemination event, so remember to plan it. So as an example, this is the time to plan your video number 2 that will present the achievements of your projects. Also remember to update the presentation with your project results. So now, when you know all about the elements of communication strategy, I invite you to have a look at our other videos about communication activities and communication principles.